Well, here I am. I don't know if anybody's here with me. We're going to finish our Mr. Edward Tulane tonight. We will see just how he finishes. We'll see if he finishes well or if he finishes not well. Hey, Sammy, how are you? So exciting. Uh-oh, do I have some settings on? Is it hard to get to? Do I have it messed up? Hey, Christina, how are you? Let me see what's going on here. It says there's some kind of restricted view or something. So I want to look at this and see if I've done something wrong. I don't know. Was it easy to get on today, Sammy and Christina? Did you have any problems? Let me see what's going on here. Something's going on. I don't know. Trying to figure it out. It says it's live now. Let's see if it works. I'm not sure if it's going to work or not. I'm working on it. So, see if it works. If it's going to work or not. Well, that was probably weird. Okay, Sammy, is it sounding good? Christina, sounding good? I think Kelly and Abram are going to be here. I know that Caroline and Reed are not going to be here because they're celebrating Robert's birthday. So there's that. So Hudson and Riley and Elijah and Aunt Rachel, if you're watching, I hope you're joining in with us. We're at a great ending to a long journey, a very long and tedious journey. So I'm hoping that it is something that you all enjoy, and it's something that you won't forget, because it is a book to me that I feel like is quite unforgettable, and I could stand to read it every year. Yes, a huge ending. So we will see exactly how this ending will be. So any guesses? Any guesses how it will end? Sammy, any guesses from you? Christina, any guesses from you? Do you have any? It's going to be a huge ending. You're right. It's going to be huge, huge. So, I have a fourth. Oh, they're here. Kelly and Abram are here. I don't know if Maddie's with y'all or Audrey, but Abram, I'm glad you're here. It's going to be a good one. Okay, so here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Kate DiCamilo's The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, illustrated by Bagram Ubutiline. Here we go. The final installment, the end. Okay, so I will read the end of chapter 23, and we'll see exactly where we left off. Okay, it says 3 people, now 4 people. Here we go. Let's get started. And then someday I will reap the return on my investment in you, all in good time, all in good time. In the doll business, we have a saying: there is real time and there is doll time. You, my friend, my fine friend, have entered doll time. And I would venture to say that doll time is probably quite longer than real time. So here we go, chapter 24. Let us see. Who could that possibly be? Why, that looks like it might be someone we know. Here we go. And so Edward Tulane was mended, put together again, cleaned and polished, dressed in an elegant suit, and placed on a high shelf for display. From this shelf, Edward could see the whole shop, Lucius Clark's workbench, and the windows to the outside world, and the door that the customers used to enter and leave. From this shelf, Edward saw Bryce open the door one day and stand in the threshold, the silver harmonica in his left hand flashing brilliantly in the sunlight flooding in through the windows. "Young sir," said Lucius, "I am afraid that we made a deal." "Can't I see him?" asked Bryce. He wiped his hand across his nose, and the gesture filled Edward with a terrible feeling of love and loss. "I just want to look at him." Lucius sighed. "You may look," he said. "You may look, and then you must go and not come back. I cannot have you in my shop every day mooning over what you have lost." "Yes, sir," said Bryce. Lucius sighed again. He got up from his workbench and went to Edward's shelf and picked him up and held him so that Bryce could see him. "Hey, Jangles," said Bryce. "You look good. The last time I seen you, you looked terrible. Your head was busted in and he is put together again," said Lucius, "as I promised he would be." Bryce nodded and he wiped his hand across his nose. "Oh, sweet Bryce." "Can I hold him?" he asked. "No," said Lucius. Bryce nodded again. "Tell him goodbye," said Lucius Clark. "He is repaired. He has been saved. And now you must tell him goodbye." "Goodbye," said Bryce. "Don't go," thought Edward. "I won't be able to bear it if you go." "And now you must leave," said Lucius Clark. "Yes, sir," said Bryce. But he stood without moving, looking at Edward. "Go," said Lucius Clark. "Go." "Please," thought Edward. "Please don't go." Bryce turned, and he walked through the door of the doll mender's shop. And the door closed. The bell tinkled, and Edward was alone. Chapter 25. Bryce is gone, and Edward is alone. Technically, of course, he was not alone. Lucius Clark's shop was filled with dolls, lady dolls and baby dolls, dolls with eyes that opened and closed, and dolls with painted on eyes, dolls dressed as queens, and dolls wearing sailor suits. Edward had never cared for dolls. He found them annoying and self-centered, twittery, and vain. This opinion was immediately reinforced by his first shelf mate, a china doll with green glass eyes and red lips and dark brown hair. She was wearing a green satin dress that fell to her knees. "What are you?" she said in a high-pitched voice when Edward was placed on the shelf next to her. "I am a rabbit," said Edward. The doll let out a small squeak. "You're in the wrong place," she said. "This is a shop for dolls, not rabbits." Edward said nothing. "Shoo!" said the doll. "I would love to shoo," said Edward, "but it is obvious that I cannot." After a long silence, the doll said, I hope you don't think that anyone is going to buy you. Again, Edward said nothing. The people who come in here want dolls, not rabbits. They want baby dolls or elegant dolls, such as myself. Dolls with pretty dresses, dolls with eyes that open and close. I have no interest in being purchased, said Edward. The doll gasped. You don't want somebody to buy you, she said. You don't want to be owned by a little girl who loves you? Sarah Ruth, Abilene. Their names went through Edward's head like the notes of a sad, sweet song. I have already been loved, said Edward. I have been loved by a girl named Abilene. And I have been loved by a fisherman and his wife, and a hobo and his dog. And I have been loved by a boy who played the harmonica, and by a girl who died. Don't talk to me about love, he said. I have known love. This impassioned speech shut up Edward's shelfmate for a considerable amount of time. Well, she said at last, still, my point is that no one is going to buy you. They did not speak to each other again. The doll was sold 2 weeks later to a grandmother who was purchasing her for her grandchild. Yes, she said to Lucius Clark. That one right there, the one with the green dress. She is quite lovely. Yes, said Lucius. She is, isn't she? And he plucked the doll from the shelf. Goodbye and good riddance, thought Edward. The spot next to the rabbit stayed vacant for some time. Day after day, the door to the shop opened and closed, letting in early morning sun or late afternoon light, lifting the hearts of the dolls inside, all of them thinking when the door swung wide that this time, the person entering the shop would be the one who wanted them. Edward was the lone contrarian. He prided himself on not hoping, on not allowing his heart to lift inside of him. He prided himself on keeping his heart silent, immobile, and closed very tight. I'm done with hope, thought Edward Tulane. And then one day at dusk, and right before he closed the shop, Lucius Clark placed another doll on the shelf next to Edward. Take a look at that doll. Don't know if you can see the details of the picture. She's different. There you are, my lady. Meet the rabbit doll, said Lucius. The doll mender walked away, turning out the lights, one by one. In the gloom of the shop, Edward could see that the doll's head, like his, had been broken and repaired. Her face was, in fact, a web of cracks. She was wearing a baby bonnet. How do you do? She said in a high, thin voice. I am pleased to make your acquaintance. Hello, said Edward. Have you been here long? She asked. Months and months, said Edward. But I don't care. One place is the same as another to me. Oh, not for me, said the doll. I have lived 100 years, and in that time I have been in places that were heavenly and others that were horrid. After a time, you learn that each place is different, and you become a different doll in each place, too. Quite different. 100 years, said Edward. I am old. The doll mender confirmed this. He said as he was mending me that I am at least that. At least 100. At least 100 years old. Edward thought about everything that had happened to him in his short life. What kind of adventures would you have if you were in the world for an entire century? The old doll said. I wonder who will come for me this time. Someone will come. Someone always comes. Who will it be? I don't care if anyone comes for me, said Edward. But that's dreadful, said the old doll. There's no point in going on if you feel that way. No point at all. You must be filled with expectancy. You must be awash with hope. You must wonder who will love you, whom you will love next. I'm done with being loved, Edward told her. I'm done with loving. It's way too painful. Psh, said the old doll. Where is your courage? Somewhere else, I guess, said Edward. You disappoint me, she said. You disappoint me greatly. If you have no intention of loving or being loved, then the whole journey is pointless. You might as well leap from this shelf right now and let yourself shatter into a million pieces. Get it over with. Get it all over with now. I would leap if I was able, said Edward. Shall I push you? Said the old doll. No, thank you, Edward said to her. Not that you could, he muttered to himself. What's that? Nothing, said Edward. The dark in the doll shop was now complete. The old doll and Edward sat on their shelf and stared straight ahead. You disappoint me, said the old doll. And her words made Edward think of Pellegrina, of warthogs and princesses, of listening and love, of spells and curses. What if there was somebody waiting to love him? What if there was somebody whom he would love again? Was it possible? Edward felt his heart stir. No, he told his heart. Not possible, not possible. In the morning, Lucius Clark came and unlocked the shop. Good morning, my darlings, he called out to them. Good morning, my lovelies. And he pulled up the shades on the windows. He turned on the light over his tools. He switched the sign on the door to open. The first customer was a little girl with her father. Are you looking for something special? Lucius Clark said to them. Yes, said the girl. I'm looking for a friend. Her father put her on his shoulders and they walked slowly around the shop. The girl studied each doll carefully. She looked Edward right in the eyes. She nodded at him. Have you decided, Natalie? Her father asked. Yes, she said. I want the one in the bonnet. Oh, said Lucius Clark, you know that she is very old. She is an antique. She needs me, said Natalie firmly. Next to Edward, the old doll let out a sigh. She seemed to sit up straighter. Lucius came and took her off the shelf and handed her to Natalie. And when they left, when the girl's father opened the door for his daughter and the old doll, a bright shaft of early morning light came flooding in, and Edward heard quite clearly, as if she were still sitting right next to him, the old doll's voice. Open your heart. Open your heart, she said gently. Someone will come. Someone will come for you. But first you must open your heart. The door closed. The sunlight disappeared. Someone will come. Edward's heart stirred, and he thought for the very first time in a long time of the house on Egypt Street and of Abilene winding his watch and then bending toward him and placing it on his left leg, saying, "I will come home to you." No, he told himself. Don't believe it. Don't let yourself believe it. But it was too late. Someone will come for you. The China rabbit's heart had begun again to open. Chapter 27. Seasons passed. Fall and winter and spring and summer. Leaves blew in through the open door of Lucius Clark's shop, and rain and the green, outrageous, hopeful light of spring. People came and went, grandmothers and doll collectors and little girls with their mothers. Edward Tulane waited. The seasons turned into years, and Edward Tulane waited. He repeated the old doll's words over and over until they wore a smooth groove of hope in his brain. Someone will come. Someone will come for you. And the doll was right. Someone did come. It was springtime. It was raining. There were dogwood blossoms on the floor of Lucius Clark's shop. She was a small girl, maybe 5 years old, and while her mother struggled to close a blue umbrella, the little girl walked around the store, stopping and staring solemnly at each doll and then moving on. When she came to Edward, she stood in front of him for what seemed like a long time. She looked at him, and he looked back at her. Someone will come, Edward said. Someone will come for me. The girl smiled, and then she stood on her tiptoes and took Edward off the shelf. She cradled him in her arms. She held him in the same ferocious, tender way Sarah Ruth had held him. Oh, thought Edward, I remember this. Madame, said Lucius Clark, could you please attend to your daughter? She is holding a very fragile, very precious, quite expensive doll. Maggie, said the woman. She looked up from the still open umbrella. What have you got? A rabbit, said Maggie. A what? Said the mother. A rabbit, said Maggie again. I want him. Remember, we're not buying anything today. We're looking only, said the woman. Madame, said Lucius Clark, please. The woman came and stood over Maggie, and she looked down at Edward. The rabbit felt dizzy. He wondered for a minute if his head had cracked open again, if he was dreaming. Look, Mama, said Maggie, look at him. I see him, said the woman, and she dropped the umbrella, and she put her hand on the locket that hung around her neck. And Edward saw then that it was not a locket at all, but it was a watch. It was a pocket watch. It was his watch. Edward, said Abilene. Yes, said Edward. Edward, she said again. Certain this time. Yes, said Edward. Yes, yes, yes. It's me. And that's all. Edward's miraculous journey. But we have what's called a coda. And so this is kind of like a wrap-up of the whole book. Okay? So the little girl named Maggie that walks into the shop was a little girl that belonged to none other than his sweet and precious Abilene. So here we go. The coda, wrapping the whole story up. Once there was a China rabbit who was loved by a little girl. The rabbit went on an ocean journey and fell overboard and was rescued by a fisherman. And he was buried under garbage and unburied by a dog. He traveled for a long time with the hobos and worked for a short time as a scarecrow. Once there was a rabbit who loved a little girl and watched her die. The rabbit danced on the streets of Memphis. His head was broken open in a diner, and he was put back together again by a doll mender. And the rabbit swore that he would not make the mistake of loving again. Once there was a rabbit who danced in a garden in springtime with the daughter of the woman who had loved him at the beginning of his journey. The girl swung the rabbit as she danced in circles. Sometimes they went so fast, the two of them, that it seemed as if they were flying. Sometimes it seemed as if they had wings. Once, oh marvelous once, there was a rabbit who found his way home. And that is the end of our miraculous journey of Mr. Edward Tulane. So, Edward Tulane was a very prideful and vain and unkind and hateful rabbit in the beginning. And yet Abilene still loved him and loved him and loved him and never gave up on him. Which reminds me of a scripture I would love to share with you, because there is someone who loves us even when we're unlovely and even when we are prideful and vain and hateful. There is someone who pursues our hearts to soften them. Someone will come. Someone will come for you. Okay? Whoever confesses that Jesus is the Son of God, God abides in him and he is God. We have come to know and have believed the love which God has for us. God is love, and the one who abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. By this, love is perfected with us, so that we may have confidence in the day of judgment, because as he is, so also we are in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves punishment, and the one who fears is not perfected in love. Where's the verse I wanted to read to us? So, as much as we wonder what is love and how can we love because he first loved us. We love others because our hearts are opened up when love is placed upon us by Jesus. So this story is not perhaps about Jesus, but the heart of Edward Tulane is changed throughout this whole story. And I know that when you open up your heart, you can love the way that Jesus loves us. So open up your heart and love others, okay? Jesus has come to save, and Edward could only be saved because of the relentless pursuing love of Abilene. She never stopped loving him. So thank you for sharing in one of my favorite stories. I love Edward Tulane, and I think he is a beautiful story of how we are and how we can be. So, have a great week. I'm done reading for this week. I will start reading in the mornings or in the afternoons. No more evening reading because school is done for me. So, thank you for joining. I love you all. Have a great evening. And I will make an announcement of what book we'll read next. I just have no idea. So, we will see. Love to all. Great evening. Great weekend. School is over with. Many blessings. Stay safe. Goodbye.